Hey guys, Zachary Shaheen here with another video from 3D Creations for Beginners. For this tutorial, we're going to be making a freestyle rendered stealth gun. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so as usual, we're going to go ahead and get into Ortho with the 5 key, and we're going to go ahead and look at it from the side view with the 3 key on the numpad. Let's go ahead and delete the cube. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is create a plane. There we go. And now let's go ahead and rotate it 90 degrees so it's looking right at us. Okay, so I want to take a quick second to explain a little bit more about what we're going to be doing. So the term freestyle refers to the kind of cartoonish look. Now this is nice to have because you can focus on making things look more cool and stylized rather than trying to make them look photorealistic. So you can have a lot more fun and be a lot more creative. So what we're going to be doing now is making basically a 2D cutout of what we want our stealth gun to look like. Now we're going to go ahead and start making the grip of the gun. So let's go ahead and click and drag and move this top portion up. Alright, now what we want to do is when we have the top 2 vertices selected, slide them over. We want to make this a little bit thinner, so let's go ahead and click and drag that in. Alright, there we are. So the next thing we want to do is make the trigger guard. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and click on the loop cut and slide tool, click that. Now we're going to click within the plane. And what we want to do is we want to make a vertice right at the top, another little edge right there. So what we can do here is extrude off of these 2 vertices to make another miniature plane that goes across. This is going to be the top of our trigger guard. Now we want to extrude this again to pull it out a little bit more, and this is going to be the front of the trigger guard. So what that means is we can select these 2 vertices here, extrude them down. Okay, now let's make one more. Extrude. So we're going to select the bottom right 2 vertices, extrude them, and pull them to right about here. Now what we want to do is close the gap between the trigger guard and the grip. The way we're going to do that is again with the loop cut and slide tool. So we're going to click that and click within the grip right here. And let's do one more right across from it. Now again, these don't have to be exact, so just kind of eyeball it so these are across from each other. Alright, so now what we want to do is select the 2 vertices at the bottom of the trigger guard and on the grip right here. And what we're going to do is press F. And F is going to join those together. Okay, there we go. So one thing I've noticed is my trigger guard is a little bit too large. That's okay. Let's just go ahead and box select and drag it in. Now we're going to start making the top of the gun. What we want to do is extrude the top portion. Select it and extrude. Let's go ahead and select just these front vertices and pull them forward. Alright, that looks good. We want to continue building the gun, so select the top vertices, extrude, move it up to right about here, and one more time, extrude, Z-axis, right there. Okay, that's going to be the profile of our stealth gun. Okay, now what I want to do here is start shaping this a little bit more, so I'm going to select this back vertice here, drag it in a little bit, maybe the top one too. Alright, now one thing I am going to do here is give the trigger guard a little bit more of a shape. So I'm going to loop cut and slide right here and right here. And what I'm going to be doing is selecting these vertices and kind of bringing it out. You can really see how easy it is to make minor adjustments and tweaks to this. I'm just tweaking right here just to make it look a little bit cooler. You don't need to follow every single one of these steps. It's really personal preference on what your gun is going to look like when you're done. Okay, I am going to make a little bit of a heel for the bottom of the grip. So, loop cut and slide, pull that down. Alright, now what we want to do is select each one of these vertices and pull them out just a little bit. Okay, now we want to make the trigger. This is going to be fairly easy to do. So, we're going to try something a little bit different. What we're going to do is first we're going to loop cut and slide and make a mark right about here. Okay, now instead of creating a new plane or extruding, we're actually going to point and click and create the shape of the object that we want to make. So what we want to do is select this vertice right here. Now we're going to press Control and then left click, and we are literally going to be drawing the object that we're going to be making. So vertice by vertice, we are going to create our new object. Okay, now to join that, loop cut and slide, pull that right here. Now select this vertice and the top of the trigger and press F. There we go. Now we have closed it. Okay, one more thing we need to do. If we go into solid and look at the trigger, it's just the outline of it, and there's no faces. So let's go ahead and create them. We're going to select all of the vertices in the trigger, and we're going to press F. Now let's make the barrel. Let's go ahead and tab out of edit mode, press Shift A, create a cylinder, rotate it 90 degrees so it's facing the right way. Alright, so what we want to do is scale this down so it's about the right size for our gun barrel. There we go. Once the width is the way that you want it, go ahead and make sure it sticks out the amount you want. Let's go ahead and make ours stick out just a little bit. Now tab into edit mode, grab these back vertices, and pull them all the way out. Okay, one more adjustment I'm going to make is I am going to pull out the back of the grip, make it a little bit thicker. There we go. So now let's go ahead and tab out of edit mode, look at it in solid, and see what we've made. So what we have is the 2D cutout of the gun we're making with the three-dimensional barrel object. So for the next step, what we are going to be doing is extruding the model of the gun sideways and make it thicker. Alright, so generally what I do when I'm making my guns is I make sure to extrude them just a little bit far past the barrel. That kind of gives me a reference of how thick I want to make it side to side. So what we want to do is go into edit mode, select all the vertices with the A button, now extrude, and pull it out to the side. And also, this is not going to be the defining thickness of the gun. You can continue to go back and make changes and adjustments if you want to make parts thicker or thinner, which we are going to be doing. Alright, so this is a stealth gun, so we definitely do want to put a suppressor or a silencer on the front of it. So let's go ahead and select the barrel, tab into edit mode, select the front vertices. So let's go ahead and extrude the vertices. Now we'll scale it up, and now extrude forward once again. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start making the shape of the gun just based on style. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the middle of the slide here a little bit thicker. So the way that we're going to be doing that is selecting the vertices in the middle of the slide. Now we want to scale them out, but the problem is if we scale them out, they're going to be scaling on all of the axes, and that's going to kind of mess things up. So we want to only scale on one axis. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to press S and then X, and that's going to make sure that we only scale on the X axis. Let's go ahead and pull it out a bit. There we go. Now let's press Z so we can see a solid view of what we just did. Okay, so as you can see, we've added some more depth to the gun, which is definitely looking pretty good. Alright, so the next thing that I really want to do is make the trigger guard and the trigger a bit thinner. And by the way, when you're selecting vertices in edit mode, you want to make sure that you're in wireframe. If you're in solid and you select vertices, it's only going to select them on this one side. But if you are in wireframe, then you can select all the way through. Okay, so before we scale down the trigger and the trigger guard, we actually do need to put one more split up here in the top of the trigger guard. Loop cut slide, click there. So we're also going to need to create a split at the top of the trigger. So what we want to do is select these two vertices, press F to make one across from there. Okay, so what I need to do now is actually move this up. So I'm just going to grab it with the G key, move it up here, grab this one vertice and move it up here. Now the reason we have to put these splits here is because when we start to scale this portion of the object, it's going to be pulling on the portion of the object on top of it as well. Let me show you what can happen. We select just this face here to scale it. Look what happens. It pulls on the other objects that are next to it. So the reason why we put these cuts here is so it will only pull on what's in the cut rather than the entire top of the object. Alright, so now what we can do is go into face select mode and begin selecting all the faces that we want to scale. Okay, so now what we can do is scale the object in. So we want to push S and then click X to scale on only the X axis. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is remove a little bit of this right here so we can actually see the top of the barrel. So what we're going to do is we are going to loop cut and slide, create a set of vertices right here. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and move these out here so the shape of the cut will be a little bit more dynamic and interesting. Okay, now let's go into face select mode, select the face, and then delete the faces. And if we want to close this gap, what we can do is go into vertice select mode, select each side of the vertices that we want to close, and press F. Let's do that to the other side as well. Okay, there we go. Alright, now it's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is just make a little bit more adjustments, pulling certain parts of the gun out to make it look more interesting. For example, the grip right here, I'm going to go ahead and make a little section right here in the middle of the grip and pull it out and make it a bit thicker. So, loop cut slide here on the top. On the bottom, let's make one for the side. And now this side. Now we have to go ahead and make one more for each one, like I was showing you before, as far as scaling goes, so we don't grab too much of the object. So now every loop, cut, and slide that we've created has been duplicated. Okay, so we want to pull out this middle portion right here. Very easy. Go to Face Select, select the faces we want to pull out. So if we go into the front view here, Scale X, pull it out just a little bit. There we go. Now let's take a look at that. Okay, so now that I've shown you the fundamentals of adding more details to the gun that you're making, feel free to pause the video, make more adjustments that you want to make, and then we'll continue with making some sights. Okay, so I made some more tweaks to my gun. Nothing too impressive, but it definitely shows the process of how you can make something like this, and you can go into a lot more detail and make something look really, really cool. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to show you guys how to do is make some sights for the gun. One day my friend took me to a shooting range and I got to use his Glock. And I remember on the sights he had, there were these little glowing green dots. I thought that was really cool, and I want to show you guys how to make something like that and add it to your gun. Now this is going to be really, really easy to do. So all we're going to be doing is creating a new cube. Alright, now let's move the cube over here. Okay, so now that we have our cube, we want to select the top right vertices and move them in. Let's move this one in a little bit. Now let's look at it from another view. Bring this in a little bit more. So it's kind of like a flat triangular object. Okay, there we go. Now the next thing we want to do is make what we're going to turn into the little glowing green dot. Go ahead and place the 3D cursor right around here by right-clicking on it. Then let's go ahead and create a new circle. Alright, now the circle went right where our 3D cursor is. We're going to go ahead and extrude it up. So give it a little bit of thickness. Now we're going to go ahead and close all these faces by pressing F. Now we're going to press R and rotate it to right about here. We're going to scale it way down. Press G to grab it. Move it where you want it. Let's move the camera around a little bit. Put it right there at the center. Scale it in. Okay, so let's move it more towards the top. Grab it. Move it up there. So what we want to do is place 3 of these, 1 in the front and 2 in the back. So what we want to do is press B, box select, grab everything, scale it down. It can be whatever size you want it to be. Put it right there in the front of the gun. Let's make sure that when we look at it from the front view, it's in the center. That looks good. Okay, so now we want to make the 2 in the back. Make sure that you have both of the objects selected, and let's duplicate them. And then once we've done that, move it off to one side. Okay, have this back one selected. Let's duplicate it again. Move it over to the other side. Okay, there we go. Now we have sights for this gun. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is shading. Flat shading versus smooth shading. There are some objects on this gun that we are going to want in smooth shading and some we're going to want flat shading. The barrel, definitely we need that in smooth shading. Click on it. Click smooth. Now, the trigger and the trigger guard we want to be smooth shaded, but we don't want the rest of it to be, or else we're going to lose some of the detail that we made. So what we're going to do is select the gun, tab into edit mode. Now what we want to do is select all of the parts that make up the trigger and the trigger guard. Alright, so we want to separate these and make them their own object. So we're going to press P and then selection. Alright, now what that is going to do is that is going to go ahead and move those into separate objects. So now when we click on smooth, it's going to apply smooth shading to the trigger and the trigger guard. Now we're almost done modeling. What we're going to do now is make a hole in the front of the barrel on the suppressor. Go into edit mode, select the vertices on the front of the suppressor. Alright, now what we want to do is extrude these, and then right click, scale it in. And if you want to get a reference, you can actually look at the object straight forward. So you can see that this is the thickness of the suppressor and this is the thickness of the barrel. So now when you scale it down, you can make it the same size as the barrel. Now we're going to extrude one more time and move it in. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is placing materials on this object. This is not going to be too in-depth because it's going to be mostly blacks and grays, but we can still have fun with it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to be doing is making the suppressor in the barrel black. So, new material, change that diffuse color to black. Now, considering we're going to be rendering in freestyle, we really don't have to put much of a specular highlight on it. Now what we're going to be doing is applying different materials to different parts of the gun. That's something that we can do pretty easily. So let's select the gun. So what I'm going to be doing is making the grip and the bottom of the slide a darker gray, and then I'm going to be making the top of the slide a lighter gray. So the first thing we want to do is make a new material. Just type in dark gray, drag the slider down, specular off. Okay, there we go. Now, like I said, we want to make the top a lighter gray, so what we're going to do is select the top of the slide. Now we're going to be making a new material, and we want to make it a little bit brighter than that last one. Specular off. Alright, now that we have the vertices selected, we're going to click Assign, and what that's going to do is assign the different material to the top of the gun. Let's also make the sights the lighter gray material that we used. Now, as far as the glowing green sights, that's going to be really easy to do. Let's go ahead and right-click on the little circle that we made, create a new material. We're going to be putting an emit value on this. Let's try 3 for now. Now do the same thing for the other 2 circles on the sights. Put the material on, and put the material on. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is actually changing the light in the scene. It's very high contrast because there's only one light source right next to the object. So what we want to do is let's move it above the object, turn the intensity down to 0.3, and let's actually make 3 of these lights. So duplicate, move it forward a little bit, duplicate, move it forward a little bit. Let's create some more lights, duplicate, so we can light the side of the object. Okay, now what we want to do is place the camera here and render it and see what it looks like. So, we're going to go ahead and go back in perspective view, and then we're going to place the camera where we want it by pressing Ctrl-Alt-0. Alright, there we go. So I can select the camera here, press G to grab it and move it around. That's good for our first view. Okay, so now we're going to be rendering in freestyle. So all that I'm going to do is down here in the rendering options, click on freestyle. So another thing I want to point out, the gun is mostly gray, so I want to do something about the background of the image, so it's not also going to be gray like this. Let's go into our world settings, click on Paper Sky, and we can go ahead and change the color of the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down, and then kind of slide it in the direction of one of the colors. There we go. Alright, render the image. Okay, so now as you can see, they have this kind of black line drawn around the object to give it that kind of cool cartoon stylized look. So that is our stealth pistol. So I'm sure that the one that you guys made is a lot more impressive than this one, because this one is just very, very basic. But feel free to use this modeling technique to make whatever kinds of weapons or cool things that you want to. So this is going to conclude this video tutorial for 3D creations for beginners. If you want to learn more from these tutorials, please continue to browse this channel. Also, check me out on Twitter at 3D4Beginners.